separate yourself from the issue at hand. Okay? Doesn't matter whose fault it is. It really doesn't. So much conflict resolution these days. People want to go, oh, well, it's their fault. It's their fault. Oh, cool. Well, now we know who to give a demerit to. That's not conflict resolution. You didn't solve anything. You just casted blame. Welcome back to the Culture Base podcast. I'm Dustin. He's Blake. We are the Culture Base. Happy to be with you. Episode 80, Effective Conflict Resolution Strategies for Teams. Before we get into that, I want to remind you that we're here to help leaders know what they're about, show where they're going, and develop a scalable team to get them there. If you're listening to this on an audio podcast platform, we'd appreciate a 5-star rating or review. Helps us to get this content out further to those like yourself, which, speaking of, go ahead and share this episode or any of our other 79 episodes prior to this. Anyone in your organization or outside of your organization that you feel could benefit from this content, that would mean a lot to us and help get this content out further. If you're watching on YouTube, we're so glad that you're here. We'd love for you to click the like button, subscribe, ring the bell. You're notified every time we drop new content. This podcast comes out weekly. You can follow us on social media at The Culture Base, BASE. We're on Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, places like that. Come chat with us there. We'd love to interact with you. And you can also find us online at theculturebase.com. Pick up some free resources while you're there. Click on the resources tab, the scalability playbook, the best interview questions ever, and Uncultured, the ebook from Blake Bear. Absolutely free just for visiting the website. Let's get into today's episode. Some conflict resolution. We talked at the end of our last episode about how we're nearing the end of Q1. Pressure's on for a lot of people. If your company has quarterly goals that they're trying to hit, then the pressure's on for you right now. So there might be some tension in the organization that you're trying to resolve. And so what we want to get into today is this idea of having some, not just conflict resolution strategy, but an effective conflict resolution strategy for you and your team. So let's get into the problem just a little bit, Blake.
So effectively, I don't know, and this sounds like harsh or whatever, but I don't truly feel like I know a person until I know how they respond in conflict. I don't feel like I know where someone's at in their maturity and growth until I see them in an area when they're not comfortable and the facade potentially starts cracking. Okay. In organizations, why do we have conflict? If we're talking about getting to the end of Q1 and trying to hit certain numbers, it's because there's some type of pressure, there's some type of opposition, there's some type of problem, and there is going to be someone held accountable, right? So there's this idea of accountability, and a lot of times conflict starts happening because a slew of people are trying to hit the same goal in a lot of different ways. Or they're trying to cover their thing, or they're trying to. So a lot of times we have conflict because of a lack of communication, for a lack of clarity on direction. But a lot of times it's even just your personality. We have different personality issues that happen because we've all learned conflict from our parents. So take 30 people in an organization. They all learned conflict potentially from 60 other people. Okay, so now, or all their experiences through school and through teachers, coaches, they saw what conflict looked like and defined. And so now they came up with how I deal with conflict. And we have the fight, we have the flight, we have the freeze, right? Those are all aspects of what happens when conflict happens. And so the problem is one, we don't know how to fight well. And I say fight because I think it's an important word that simplifies what conflict is. There is some type of fight. Okay. So, or rumble. We know Brene Brown talks about rumbles a lot. We don't know how to fight well because nobody's exemplified how to fight well. So we have conflicts that are never resolved because someone says, "This is what I said and you got to do it." And the conflict's not done there. It feels like it's done there. It's not done there. Okay. It's still unresolved. Then you've got people who are just trying to avoid the conflict. Every time the conflict starts to rise, they're out. Okay. That's not going to be a healthy culture that deals with the right rumbles, the right fights, the right issues. But even more so, and this isn't terribly sexy to say, but there's just a lack of process when it comes to how do we fight well. A good, healthy culture says, here are the rules. Like, nobody's mad that two guys are boxing each other in the middle of a ring, right? Nobody's mad about that because that's what people came for. But there are rules beyond to that ring or to the boxing fight here. What are your rules? Have you set up your rules? Have you set up the things that are really important to say, here are the ground rules. Within this, let's have conversation. Okay. Is the rule that for every minute you talk, you got to listen? Because that's important. Stephen Covey talks about how, I think it's Stephen Covey, that like good communication is seeking to understand instead of be understood, right? So we think, oh, I'm saying it, they just need to understand me. No. Seek to understand what their side is instead of trying to help them understand what your side is. When we do that, we stay curious, people are way less defensive. Okay, so not having a process, not having the barriers, not having the ground rules for a good fight, which you as the leader, I'm just going to tell you right now, you've got to set those. Okay, nobody else is going to set those. They will actually. They will set those, but they'll be all over the floor on what the right rules are. And then people will get mad because people aren't following their rules. And then you fire people and you get rid of people that maybe you shouldn't have gotten rid of. Because somebody was following these ambiguous rules that have never been set in an organization.
Yeah, people show up to the fight with their own set of expectations. Someone swings too early, and they're like, "Whoa, what are we doing here?"
Yeah, hit the bell.
Yeah, and hit the bell. Yeah, what bell? There's no rules. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I want to say too before we end this section on the problem that conflict is a relational issue. Conflict is a relational issue. And where do we see the greatest picture of relationship in our world? It's marriage. And it's been said time and time again. Thousands of people have said this before, but healthy couples fight. If you go into marriage counseling and they say, "Tell me about your last fight," and they go, and you say, "We don't fight," they go, "We have a bigger problem here."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
No different in your organization. Your organization is made up of people who are relational beings, and conflict is a relational act, right? It's not you can have conflict with a Xerox, right? Take it out back and beat it with a baseball bat. Conflict over, I win, right? There doesn't have to be any rules to that. But the conflict between you and your coworkers, you and your boss, you and your peers, you and your subordinates, like those are the ones, those are the conflicts that matter. So if it matters to you, if what you're doing in your organization matters to you, and it should, and if it doesn't, rethink that. But if it matters to you, then the relationships and the people should matter to you as well. So let's get into the solution. All right, everybody loves a good framework, right? And this one's no different, but I don't want to just say the word framework or process or whatever, and you just go like, "Oh, here they go again with their processes and frameworks. Everything's got to have a binder to it. Let's bring out the HR binder on how do we solve conflict." Well, Section 3, Article 2 here says to let everyone look each other in the eye first. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, like, just establishing the ground rules. Where are we not going to go, right? What is okay to say and what's not okay to say. And I think the biggest misconception in conflict resolution is people tend to attack the person and not the problem because of that. Because of what I said earlier about it being so relational. Look, you are not the sum of the conflict that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
You are not the conflict. You are a player in the conflict. But conflict is not your identity. You're not, if someone's told you you're just a troublemaker, that's a lie. That's a lie. You are in control of that. So you get to decide what I'm going to bring to the table in this conflict. It's about moving forward. Yes, you need to deal with the root, but it's also about moving forward. And so you want to create some clear mediation protocols. Like, hey, we're not going to talk about each other's families. Like, Joe's a dirtbag. He's divorced anyway, so no wonder he XYZ's at work. You know what I mean? No, we're not going to do that.
Yeah,
that's below the belt. We're here to talk about the issue. Yeah. And many therapists will tell you when you're walking through an issue, like I said a minute ago, you're not the sum of the conflict. Separate yourself from the issue at hand. Okay? Doesn't matter whose fault it is. It really doesn't. So much conflict resolution these days, people want to go, oh, well, it's their fault. It's their fault. Oh, cool. Well, now we know who to give a demerit to. That's not conflict resolution. You didn't solve anything. You just casted blame. You know what I mean? So if you could separate yourself from the problem for a second, put the problem in the center of the table and observe it for what it is, analyze and fix that issue. Everything you do at work is solving problems, right? Everything, no matter what it is. You're solving problems all day, every day. Look at conflict, no different. Remove the people from the equation, set the conflict right in the middle and go, there's something broken in this, let's fix it. That's as simple as that, folks. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Blake? No? You want to get to the action steps?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Action steps. Here we go.
So for leaders, obviously the first thing we're going to say is you got to model the good conflict resolution or model when you screw it up. Okay. So it isn't just, oh, this is what you should do. When you do screw it up, own it. It'll go just as far as if you model the good stuff. Okay. So everything's redeemable if you're willing to eat some humble pie there. Okay. So that would be the first thing I'd say. The next one is we talk about conflict a lot, about differences and opinions and, oh, that's not right. That's not right. And it's very relational too. But sometimes our conflicts are around ideas. Okay. There are so many people in an organization and their ideas, it's like they treat their ideas like it's part of them. Okay. So like, oh, this is my idea. And if people think it's dumb, they're going to say something and they're going to destroy it. And then I'm a failure. And they go through that whole like mind trash. Our ideas are not who you are. You will have so many shitty ideas. That's okay.
That's right.
Right. So conflict goes to our problems too. Last episode, we talked about fixed versus growth mindset. Okay. There are a lot of times we allow certain things to be in that like should have rules around it. And for example, when we're talking about ideas and conflict within ideas, you will have people who are no monsters. I talk about them a lot on here, but they'll be like, oh, that won't work because of blah, blah, blah. And you're like, cool, thank you for that. And they're like, oh, no, I know everything. That won't work. That's not allowed. That kind of shit is not allowed in good conflict around ideas. A better growth mindset way to respond to that. And a lot of times I'm not like, hey, shut up. I'm not like that. I'm more like, hey, I want you to reframe what you just said because you just went to why something won't work. Instead, I want you to say, hey, interesting idea. How do we solve for this problem? Can we throw that out there instead of that won't work because? How about how do we solve for this? Because if we can solve for this, this will work. Now, all of a sudden, we got into growth mindset instead of fixed mindset, right? So you're building rules around even ideas in conflict because conflict doesn't have a boundary, unfortunately. It's in your ops, it's in your sales, it's in the way you talk to customers, it's in the way you talk to your team. It's everywhere. So we've got to figure out what the rules are for all of those areas. So another aspect that kind of helps with some of these things for leaders is to have a coaching that's going on, whether it's we've talked about it before, having a fixed coaching program or whatever, versus just going and touching base with your team intentionally, once a month, once a week. And when you can do that and create a check-in process there, you allow a moment to be like, nothing's in my hands. Say what you need to say that allows some of that conflict resolution.
Yeah, I'll say too, with that, the coaching process, sometimes you need a mediator. Sometimes you're too close to the problem and you're not hearing each other. Most conflict happens because, as far as interpersonal conflict, right? That's what we're talking about here, this relational conflict. Most of that happens because someone isn't hearing what's actually being said, and they're misinterpreting the other party, right? So sometimes you need, I say a mediator, but really it's what I call often, you need an interpreter. I walk into some meetings sometimes, just recently with one of our clients. I walked into a meeting and the two of them were talking about the same thing, but neither one of them were getting to the resolution. And I said, you guys need an interpreter here. He's saying this. Is that what you're saying? That's what I'm saying. Great. Now he's saying this. Is that what you're saying? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Great. Okay. So do y'all hear how those things are different? You know what I mean? It's like sometimes you just need somebody to come in and go, wake up, point that out. What I'm hearing isn't actually what's being said. Anything else you want to add for the leaders?
No.
Cool. I want to just say this before we leave here. We talk about team members all the time. Yes, you can model it. Same for leaders. Just as an organization as a whole, just commit to addressing the elephant in the room. When you do that, though, you have to keep control and move the conversation and keep the conversation moving forward. Here's what conflict resolution is not. It's not, let's sit around and badmouth the organization and badmouth each other for 30 minutes and leave with no resolve, and everybody's in a worse mood after the meeting than they were before the meeting. If you're in a worse mood after the meeting, then you know your conflict resolution is broken.
Yeah.
It's broken. Conflict resolution is supposed to bring, get this, resolution. You know what I'm saying? It's like, yeah. But address the elephant in the room. Nothing kills culture more than the elephant in the room just walking around taking a dump all over everybody's desk and nobody's going, are we going to deal with this elephant or what? This thing is crapping all over our desks.
Yeah.
I can't work in this. It smells terrible. But they go, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Or they've gone nose deaf to the crap, right? They're like, oh, that's just Pete. He's our pet elephant. It's like, I know I'm going way off on here with the elephant in the room analogy, but I like it. I'm just saying, commit to addressing it. That will change your culture quicker than anything else. Just commit to addressing it. But remember, you have to stay in control of the conversation. You have to stay in control of the emotions of the conversation. Sorry, not stay in control of the conversation. Stay in control of the emotions of the conversation. Keep it centered on the thing and not on the people.
Yeah.
And it'll work every time, I promise you.
Yeah. Stay away from absolutes in these talks.
Never's and always, or never and always a good idea.
That's
All right, we'll be back with you next episode 81, the power of storytelling in shaping your company culture. I'm super excited to get into that one with y'all. It's a topic that we haven't really hit on too much before, but we're going to get into it with you next time on the Culture Based Podcast. Have a great week.